Hello again, Twitch, and welcome back to our cooperative world building series, a stream dedicated to helping us all work together to become better players and DMs. I am Rooseplease, and today we're going to be discussing Session 0 as a whole. We're going to discuss what a Session 0 is, what we hope to accomplish, and then we're going to start putting pen to paper and thinking about how we're going to plan a Session 0 together to run later on stream. Hello, hello. Hello again. Thank you for the raid, Maya Lancer. Four ice trolls, a giant and a dragon. It's fairly productive for like a couple of hours, right? Who here is excited to start session planning? We might have to rename the stream of just sort of watching that behind the scenes, you know. Past Rooseplease does the intro, and present Rooseplease hosts the stream. The fair trade-off of jobs for the two of us. And I was just watching that, and I think world building's like that's what we're doing here, but we've almost come to an end. I guess we're going to continue to build the world as we go, but we're now crossing the threshold into session planning proper, as they say. Hello to anyone who's new. Little rundown. We are, as a little community, we are building our own D&D campaign from scratch. We're starting with world building itself, and then we're going to move on to session planning. We're going to plan sessions, encounters, and everything you need to run D&D. But we're not just that. No, not just that at all. We're a community, and we're here to help you and us, more importantly me, all get better at our craft. Whether you're a DM or just a player, maybe you've never played before and you want to. That's what we're here for. So if you've ever got anything you want to talk about, just toss a comment into chat, and we'll discuss whatever you want to talk about, RPG related, of course. If you've got a topic that's not RPG related, we can give it a little bit of attention if it's sensible. But that's kind of the main purpose of what we're doing here. Is we want to build a community of people who want to hone their craft and just enjoy playing D&D or your favorite RPG system together, right? I for one don't do enough of it, so this is a good way to make sure we do going forward. So what you've missed so far, all the sessions are now. I've been fairly productive this week, chat, and all of the previous sessions are now available on YouTube. Thank the Lord. So if you head over there, if you've missed any of it, if you're watching this for the first time, you can catch up really easily over at YouTube. I've made some quality of life changes, as you see the chat now appearing over the map as if by magic. So when that's primarily for the YouTube videos, so that I noticed as I was trimming and uploading them that because of the format, this is very much me talking to chat and we're bouncing ideas off each other. And if you can only hear my half of the conversation, not see what's being said, it's quite hard to follow. So sorry about that, but that's what the first 4 sessions are like. But from here on out, there's going to be that disappearing chat appearing, so that you can keep up with what's going on. But as a close little group, we've worked together to shape the start of quite an interesting RPG world. It's a very fun tongue-in-cheek campaign we're building, and we started off with deities. So we laid down the creation, a very brief idea of the creation of the world itself, and what our hierarchical structure was for our deities. We've got like this idea of like a Voltron god that breaks down into demigods that all have their own. They all have their own like realms that they govern over, and they tend to be a patron of a race as well in the world. And then we looked at society in session 2. So we started to discuss what's going on in the world today. Right. So we've got this. We're at the tail end. We're in the death throes of a once mighty kingdom that came to power through force, and it was largely like the king himself is a human, and we had a human monarchy that was ruling over this land. And they're on their way out. There's a Senate now, and it's for the people. And we're sort of in the process of what is supposedly, or supposedly, if you're an intellectual like me, a God. Supposedly, it's a non-hostile takeover, right? With the king's handing over power to the Senate willingly, right? And whether that remains to be true is up to us. But that's going to be a nice central tension for our campaign. We have a map that was previously drawn, but we've started to name some of our settlements, and then we've put a lot of work into Sunnybrid, which is our starting town down here, the coastal. I'm doing that thing again where I hover my mouse over here. Look, our southern town, Sunnybrid, is a harbour town. So we've come up with a list of NPCs that we're going to run in that town. And last week we focused on the town and have worked out a few low-level starting missions for our players to get themselves involved in that don't require them to engage immediately with the threat of our central tension. So we're actually well on our way. This with what we've written down, you could very comfortably run a session tomorrow. I would be more than happy to run this for 4 players tomorrow, no problem. There's enough information there to start running sessions, which is great. And I should mention, all this information is available in our document. It's a Google Doc, so you can look at it online. It's free for anyone to look. You can't edit at the moment. I might change it so that you can add comments, but that seems crazily open to abuse. So I haven't been reading any of this. Sorry. I was on a roll, you know. I was introing my heart out, you know. I was introducing the stream and explaining what's going on to new viewers. How about talking about the Rudiger Kepper training ground bus stop? I haven't actually. I've only read headlines so far. With Frankie, yeah. For anyone who doesn't know, I'm a Chelsea fan. If we're talking about that, they're soccer, and Ali Scala is throwing me off by discussing a training ground bust up between Rudiger and Kepper. Kepper Arrizabalaga. Yeah, so if you click on the link in chat or copy it, you can come and look at this Google Doc, which has got everything we've written down on it. And this is open for you to. This is a shared experience, right? So I want your ideas, I want your feedback, and we're going to incorporate everyone's ideas as a group. This by no means is my work. This has been created by the lovely folks there in chat. Big shout out to you guys. Give yourselves a thumbs up, pat on the back. If we had our own emotes, we would do that thing. That's a Twitch thing, innit? Use your own custom emotes, but we don't have those, so we're just gonna go with the pat on the back and the thumbs up. Yeah. So if you've got any ideas, that's what chat's for. Get them in there. We want to hear your ideas, and we will include your ideas in our campaign. As you look through this document, things are color coded. We have green objects in the document are named, right? So we've got some demigods here that are named. Chadsworth is named. There's a book series called The Lusty Dragonborn Maid. That is an object that has been named in our world, right? But there are a lot of blue objects. You look here, the kingdom itself is unnamed. The world itself is unnamed. And those blue highlighted objects will all, before anybody gets to play this campaign, where they will all need a name, and that's where you come in, chat. We want to hear your ideas for if you want to name a deity after yourself, that is not a problem. If you want to name an NPC after yourself, also not a problem. If you want to name an NPC something that isn't, as provided it's not offensive, shouldn't be a problem. So that's another thing. Just chuck that into the chat. Make sure you make it obvious what you're trying to name and what the name is, and we can do that for you here too. I've added some. There's a new colour. One day I'm going to get on top of this, right? Because this is very true to life what my own personal notes as a DM look like. I use some colours and things, and I think I'm really organised, but to anyone else looking, they're probably like a jumbled mess. So I apologise if that's the case, but I'm trying to stay on top of it. I've added a new colour this week as I typed up last week's progress. This, like a pink highlight that exists now, is like a specific, like a location or like any kind of object, with be it person or location, that doesn't require a name but is it's like an improper noun, right? Like the docks in Sunnybrid are a location that are going to be important for us writing our story, but they don't have a name. They're just the docks in Sunnybrid. Shipyards. Pumpkin Patch Inn should be these three should be green, though. He says. I've made this. Have I made this just a wee bit too narrow to have my? Oh, I saw it then. Maybe, come on, there we go. I'll check that in a second. Make sure that's not gone. That's not gone belly up for you to read. Yeah. So these are named, right? But there's a watchtower to the southeast of our town, and that doesn't require a name. It's just a watchtower. But if we're talking about it when we're writing a session out or we're writing an encounter, the watchtower is a relevant object. That yeah. So I've talked the wheels off of that. That's where we are. We've got a new colour now. Probably going to add more in the future as things get more convoluted. But that's where we are. So we start with, again, if you're new, you all know this. Everyone who's in chat at the moment knows this. But if you're new, we start every week with a little bit of a back and forth. I like to drink my coffee. Is really what this is about. This is what gets me comfortable with what's going on. I like to drink my coffee. There's a little bit of back and forth with chat. This is your opportunity to name stuff. That doesn't mean you can't do it later on in the stream, but it's like this is the structured part of the episode, where if you've had any ideas throughout the week, you can chuck a name at us and we can add names to things in the document. So I'm going to take a couple of sips of my coffee and give anyone an opportunity to put any suggestions they've got in chat down. But following on from that, we're going to start with our big topic of the week, which is a topic I talk about a lot. Eastshire upon Avon. Are we calling the river Avon? I have something I would like to discuss with you. Yes. So I was talking about I made light of the fact that we've called our Warhammer. Why have I put Warhammer in? I want Age of Sigmar. I made light of the fact that we've called our cities to the northwest and northeast of our starting town are called Eastshire and Westburg, right? And I was doing some work this week and discovered, maybe it's not on here, maybe it's on the first city, or is it a book? There was a book about Lady Olinda in the Warhammer Age of Sigmar universe, and there are twin towns that she likes to once a generation, her and her host will attack these two twin towns, and they're literally called like Eastville and Westshire or something, and it made me chuckle a lot. Bear with me 2 seconds because I really want to know. It was a book. I'm sure it was a book. I know it's Lady Olinda, and this is going to be nothing to people who don't play. I don't play Age of Sigmar, but I've read enough to know little bits. And yeah, they're like in the underworld, and they are literally names. They're twins towns, and they're east something and west something. And that made me chuckle because I grumbled a little bit last week about calling our cities that. So more fool me, right? So Avon, come on, Eastshire, East something else, right? Avon. So I know full well that we're talking about the catalogue, aren't we? We're talking about the product catalogue, not the river. Can Reich Flairford's inner council be referred to as the Four Horsemen? Yeah, sure. Yeah, sure. Yeah, so this is a good sort of time to like discuss our world as a whole, right? We're going with like a very sort of campy, like we're very tongue-in-cheek comedy and like what have you for this campaign, which is something I'm not personally great at. So we're rolling with it as a learning experience for me to not take things too seriously. But we're going for that. Like, if we're going to make a pie, and this is a very real thing I'm going to discuss later on. If we had a pie chart for the content of our campaign, comedy would be like a really big segment of that pie chart. You'd have like a third comedy and like a third action, maybe. So like a third. It'd probably be more than that actually. This campaign probably be like 50% comedy, 25% action, and 25% RP would be my guess. But obviously, I'll leave that to you guys. Flairford, I'm looking for. Right, Flairford. But we want to be at the top. He gets mentioned a lot, does Big Reich, doesn't he? He's an important guy. Space Mountain Palace, that's named. Let's get that green. The Four Horsemen. One-sixth courtroom drama. One-third down with Fulham. Away the lads. It's difficult to hate Fulham because there's just nothing to them. You know, there's no right like. Where are we? We're 22 minutes in, and I've been horrifically derailed. That's a bit of a record. The problem with one of the biggest problems with Chelsea is we don't have like a gritty rivalry, because Fulham are literally like 20 paces away from Stamford Bridge, and that's like they should be our biggest rivals. But then the competition's not there, you know. And I say that both objectively and as a sniper Fulham fans that's the case, right? It's not just, I don't say that just with derision. I say that because that just is a fact. There's no real competition there. And then you've got Spurs and Arsenal are like are more like classic rivals, but we just hate both of them. They would hate us, but probably they don't hate us anywhere near as much as they hate their actual rivals. So it's just like we kind of miss out on that as like your bigger rivals with Fulham right now. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Ali Scarlett, famous Toon fan. It's kind of like I suppose it's nothing like you and Sunderland, I guess, because you can maintain that bitter rivalry when there's like, you know, where there's multiple leagues difference between you. But like I just don't feel that for Fulham. Four Horsemen are the King's Inner Council. There's an inner circle. In our campaign, if we're pursuing to the idea that the king, if our players decide they want to go down the route of the king being the bad guy and supporting the council, then these four horsemen have got to be like the most dastardly men alive. I imagine there would be men as well. The king, he's a monarch from a royal family, from a kingdom of men that's taken over by force, right? I feel like he'd be fairly convinced that humans are better than every other race, right? And thank you, Robbie, for there are a number of these commands now that will bring up additional information about which is both an Easter egg for you to play around with, but also an interesting way of, if you don't have the document open, which you are more than welcome to not have open, then you can find out information on some of the characters and places by putting an exclamation mark in front of their name, and hopefully there'll be a command for that. There's also commands for things that are a little more stupid. Bam Banderson is his right hand man. Have a great stream. We have to go make tea. Have fun, enjoy tea, and thank you for the raid. I have no idea how to do a raid, so I'm impressed. You'll have to show me when we're working it this week. Enjoy your tea. What am I doing? I'm adding Barn Anderson. Sorry, Whoa, whoa! Who said that? Barn Banderson. For Herb. Barn Banderson. Barn Banderson. The King's dastardly, and I'm putting dastardly because I think dastardly is the perfect word for. I feel like the sort of hijinks that he'd get up to would be very like more chaotic than evil. It also hosts our channel. Oh, all right, thank you very much. I think I don't know how any of this works, but I know Mighty Lancer are like on a host list for mine. Or if you're on, if Mighty Lancer's streaming and I'm not, and you look at my channel, it'll show you that they're on. Barn Banderson and his brother Bolly. The ideas are flowing today. I love it. King Dastardly right hand man. Bully. Is that an I or an L? Bully Talanchard. Oh, let's paste without formatting, shall we? Let's make this. Let's make this. Let's make this a list, shall we? So it's easier on the eyes. For that, you come here for the interesting D&D content. You stay for the wonderful document formatting. He's the last horseman. I'm going to put that in. Yeah, I'm going to. Yeah, the last horseman. World name idea: the Tattered Veil. We're just naming everything. I love it. Would the world be like the region though, rather than like Tattered Veil sounds like the world itself, like Earth, like has like a more grandiose name, right? Tattered Veil's like the region we're set in. So maybe it's just the world, right? So Tattered Veil. That sounds like, I don't know if this is intentional, but it sounds like sounds quite ominous. Like it's like a double entendre in it. Like the idea that like it's like what am I trying to say? I like the idea that all of this is public, all this information is public, right? So if it's like it's not very well veiled, so it's like the Tattered Veil, and then also it's just a cool name for like the Tattered Veil, the Tattered Veil region. I like that. That sounds so like classic RPG. Crispin Hulk. So is Reich one of his own four horsemen? Does he get his hands dirty? They're not quite so Forgotten Realm. No, the Tattered Veil is like so much cooler than. Not quite so Forgotten Realm kind of fits with our like fairly comic interpretation of the campaign now. We need Meanwhile, Inca. God, it's a play. It's a bit of a play on the gods crossing the veil, but also how the world's been torn apart. It works on so many levels, and we thought about them all. That's the. We should write a book, guys. I believe we can do it. Don't you? Bean Willinka. I like Bean Willinka. I don't mind Crispin Hawes Wah, you know. Yeah, and yes, he does. We remember. I don't know if we've ever written that down about our. It's the more we write about our hero, right? And that's kind of what I'm. Right, Flair. The more we talk about him, the more I feel like I kind of dig him, you know. Horseman, King's His. That's his name. Has never been defeated. Has never capitals been defeated in single combat. Yeah, before we go down this long winding road of the great vote between Bean Wellinker and Crispin Wah. Was once famously bested at a tourney by muddy trails. I think I think we're going with Bean Wellinker, right? And that's not me. That's not me outing the idea of Crispin. But he could come into it later, much later on as because these guys I feel are dastardly, right? And Crispin could just be outright evil. Muddy Trail's father. His father works on aqueducts. Yeah, I'm going with Bean. Going with Big Bean. And we'll save Crispin Wah for much later on. He's going to be maybe he used to be affiliated, but then he did something really bad, and then they had to cut ties, right? Being Wellinker. Short in stature. Oh God. Short in stature. Tall in dastardliness. Tall in dastardly deeds. I'm styling, profiling, horseback riding, high flying, kiss stealing, wheeling and dealing, son of a crossbow. I need a soundboard where I can play rounds of applause and stuff, because you know, one of my greatest fears doing this is deep. We're going deep now. One of my greatest fears is that my neighbours can hear me streaming, and that's not like, you get over the kind of embarrassment there quite early. But like, if I were to start a round of applause in ideas and stuff, then then it'd get weird. I've got to look them in the eyes. We going out in the morning, picking up the morning paper, bringing the milk in. I make eye contact with them, and I don't want to have to deal with that. I don't want to deal with the judgment. son of a crossbow. Cool, are we all ID'd out? No, we're not. We're going. Muddy Trails in his polka dot plate armor. Who is Muddy Trails, right? In our world, right? Who are we? This person once bested Right Flair in a tourney, right? Importantly, not single combat, right? But a tournament. Could this be the moment that the kingdom finally decided to push for a senate, right? Right Flair for Tizzy's putting out time. I'm just gonna draw this. We can answer that question later. Way down here. I don't think they would actually exist in the capital city, but oh god, what's wested? Who are they? Off a dusty road, yeah, just in the middle of. There's like a real good. There's a decent location for that. Somewhere off. I have to do this here, which is like quite annoying. I can't hover my mouse over the main map. Oh, and we definitely don't want to do that. By hell. Less of that. How do we go back? I just can't control Z. Bear with me while I fix what I've just broken. We good? Are we good? I think we're alright. It's really hard to see in it because I've made everything dark and then like the backdrop's dark. It's like a night mode. I can't see where the edges end and the edge begins and the edges do their edge. I'll see myself out. Nope. None of it. Yeah, so there's a lot of like the forest up here. There's a lot of dead space here around the hills, and then also there's quite an interesting like area between the two rivers that like obviously is unlikely to be. There'd be some kind of like this to me is like a bandit track between these two cities. You probably wouldn't want to like ship a caravan down here because it's not a proper road and it would be really marshy and dangerous. But you probably find a lot of bandits down there. Muddy Sun so rarely has a good idea. They're like gold dust. This is the best rabbit hole. Borders fine again, plus. Thank you very much. Thank you for reaching out. I feel like I'm gonna need one of you gents to send me a summary of what you've decided for these characters, because I stopped following a little while ago, right? But you should definitely let me know what you want, and I'll add it to the document. So, this isn't a suggestion. This is a genuine question. Have we exhausted our creative additions to the document this week? Want to become famous? Buy followers, primes, and viewers. Wow. I do want to. It's all I want to become famous. You know, buy followers, primes. You know. Oh, whoa! Oh my god! If I could if I had a hit marker that I could put on the screen and a klaxon, that's Robbie B for the very first time getting admin-y. Nicely done. Creative is nothing for you now. Creative rests. You've earned the rests today, guys. Thank you very much for your contributions, and thank you very much, Robbie B. For I was good. I was about to click on the link. You know, how much does it cost to be like proper famous? You know, we could have a whip round. I want to be an influencer. How many? Let's put it this way. I've got £13.50. What can you offer me? Right. WX1QZW1QXZZZ1Q1. Oh, it's actually there. Wow1 Quaz was 37. Not worth it, mate. Not like that. This generation's big dignity. I hope that doesn't come from a. I hope that comes from a position of ignorance and not a position of experience. How many times have you got to be burned? You know. Yeah. So, ladies and germs, right? Let's start with session 0, right? I'm really excited about this actually. That's because we're as I sort of alluded to earlier, we're like crossing over into genuine session planning now. We're not just you know sat in our bedroom staring at the ceiling thinking about a fantasy world. We are now taking steps towards running a game of D&D for people. And how much fun is that, right? That is the ultimate dream. That's why we're here. So, session 0, and I apologise for the name of like this episode being. It's already confusing because there was a session 0 in this series. So this is session 5, which is the 6th like stream episode, right? But this one's called session. This one's called session 5. I had to add discussing session 0 because I didn't want it to just be session 5, session 0. Because that's 5-0. That's fiddy, you know. What did 50 Cent do when he was hungry? Idiot. Oh God! Can I have a 10 out of 10 in chat for my quality jokes? No. Let's get back to session 0 then. Something I feel I might be good at. So I talk about this a lot, and you guys have listened to me talk about this a lot. Big banner lads, thank you very much. You're too kind, literally, but I'll take it. So, again, for anyone who's new, anyone who hasn't had the delight of going back and watching over all of our previous episodes, and perhaps people are new to D&D, I'm going to try and make this a fairly brief, which is really not my specialty, not going off on a tangent. But I will try and make this a fairly brief overview of what I mean when I say session 0, because some people don't do this at all when they play D&D, which I'll preface this by saying is absolutely fine. There's no wrong way to play D&D, right? As long as there are actually. Let's go back. There are wrong ways to play D&D. There's no wrong way to play D&D that results in everyone having fun. So, it is what I would do today if I was starting a new campaign, and it is what I would suggest people do if they're new to the game. D&D is a very kind of I say D&D, and whenever I say D&D, you can substitute that for RPG system of your choice. But RPGs are very unique in that they open. It's what makes them great, and is also like a potential crutch that they open up people's personal opinions, right, becoming a massive part of the game. Everyone's personality becomes intrinsic to the game because in any other type of game, you're restricted. Your actions are restricted to the mechanics of the game, right? Whereas the great thing about RPGs is that you can basically do anything you want. But that means that you're just got a parent from here. Tell Izzy I said, oh, tell the little one I said hi. Where was I? That's throwing me. So you're allowing anyone to do anything, right? And that means that by playing as a group, you're kind of entering into an agreement with everyone to you're entering into agreement with everyone to play a game that is intended for everyone to have fun. But any one person has the power in this scenario to like ruin it or make it better for everyone, right? And there's no hard rules about what is okay and what's not okay. And we're entering a situation where we're almost talking about real life, right? It's the same thing, right? There are social norms that need to be followed, and we need to act in a way that isn't negative for other people. And unfortunately, some people need to be reminded of that. So, I would always start with session 0, and my main goal for session 0 is to ensure that everyone's on the same level when they're going into a game. And that's not like that. The way I've just described it makes it sound like it's a very negative thing, and it's like we're going to do a job interview and make sure everyone's compatible and stuff. And that's not the sole purpose of what we're doing. But there are little things that people don't even consider that are a fact of playing D&D together, right? So there are different ways to play. I sort of alluded earlier to the idea that like I'm not as comfortable with. I don't have as much history in running games of D&D that have the comedy like ramped up, right? So even that is like that's a distinction that is completely unharmful. But you can have players who've shown up to play a game and they want comedy to be like 70% of what goes on, and you can have people turn up who are real serious, like who want like a really deep storyline, and they want to RP heavily, and like so they're not going to appreciate like penis jokes at the table, right? And that doesn't mean penis jokes aren't funny, and that doesn't mean the people who are making those jokes shouldn't, right? We want to establish before we start playing that we're all going to get on together, and we want like one of the other things you want to make sure that everyone's comfortable with talking about like their preferences and stuff. We want to make sure everyone's comfortable with talking about it as openly together, because we're all interested in having fun, right? And hopefully nobody is interested in ruining it for anyone, right? But we can all, even us here, like those of us who are in chat, can all agree that we wouldn't go to a table and want to ruin the fun for anyone else. But we can all also agree that if we're the person who wants to be serious at a table of people who want to make penis jokes, that it's not okay for us to then sit there and be like, to then judge those people for having fun in their own way. So it's best if we can all agree beforehand what we're expecting to get out of the experience together. And it sounds like we'll go over it like in more detail. It sounds a lot more like, oh my god, this is like a counselling session. It sounds a lot more like that than it actually is. It's just a case of like having this open conversation with everyone before you start playing and saying like, because anyone who's played D&D, and even people who haven't, anyone who's here to have fun is going to be okay with, provided they're a reasonable person, right, is going to be okay with tempering their own expectations to match the group. If you're that person who wanted something different out of the game, and you realise that you're in the minority and everyone else wanted to play a different type of game, you're probably willing to say, oh, okay, sorry, I didn't realise that's what we were doing here. But like, if that's what all of you want to do, I just want to play with you. So if that's what we're doing, then I'm willing to make that sort of compromise to play the game, because I'm more interested in having fun and playing the game than I am like playing it my way, right? And if you have that discussion first, it's a lot easier to like get over that hump than having the player in session one sit there frustrated, going, why is everyone acting like this? That's not what I was expecting. So you're a player as well as a DM, but there's a tendency to expect that because you're the DM, it's all going to happen your way as well, and the players are just going to have to deal with it. And that's like, that couldn't be farther from the truth. If you like, we want to sit down. Like, this is kind of I said I wouldn't ramble, but this is the bottom line, right? Because Stone Cold told us that was how it was going to be. You have to find out who doesn't want to make the. You have to find out who doesn't want to make the penis joke, so you can exclude them. Yeah, we want to know who to ostracize. That's exactly what I'm saying. Lie about when you're playing, so you can leave them at home. Exactly. Yeah. So, like, the bottom line is that we want to all have an open discussion at the start and just find out what everyone wants to do and work out what the best thing for everyone is, right? And you're not exempt from that. If you again, provided you're not antisocial, right? We've planned out this campaign, and we're heavy on the comedy. And if we sat down with a group of 6 players, say, to do this session 0, and we're going to introduce the campaign, and we're going to say, I'm Roos Pliz, I'm going to be DMing this campaign. We're literally gonna make a pie chart together, right? Here's a pie chart of like how much RP and how much combat and stuff I'm expecting. Like, this is how I like to DM. If all 6 of those players turned around to you and said, "Oh, we really wanted to do a horror campaign, like a real gritty horror campaign," it's up to you, right? You shouldn't feel pressured to do something you don't want to do. But I personally would look at that and say, I need to be clear that, like, if you're not comfortable because you don't have much experience DMing or whatever, and the players want to do a genre that you're not familiar with, it doesn't mean you have to. You might come away from this deciding that, like, maybe it's best that you don't start this campaign with this group because, like, no one's gonna have fun, and no one should feel badly about that, right? Because we're making sure that people aren't wasting their time ahead of time. But in most cases, like in that situation, I would say, "Oh, right, sorry, I had no idea that's what you guys would be into," and I would say, "Let's give it a crack." I've not run a horror campaign before, so you're gonna have to bear with me as a DM. If I do a terrible job, just bear with me. I would like to get better anyway, and it's something I've thought about before. And I would probably ask them for some time. I'd say, rather than starting next week, can you give me like a few more weeks to modify what I've written and make it more horror genred, right? And come back and like, let's start playing a game that everyone's into, right? That's all we're doing. And you'll find that one person at the table who wanted the comedy campaign and has now realised everybody wanted it to be horror, and they can then make a decision for themselves, like, would they be interested in playing a horror campaign, or would they sit there trying to make the jokes anyway because that's what they wanted to do. And hopefully, if they realise that that's probably what they would end up doing, that would be a negative thing for the other players, and they might just decide, okay, I'm going to sit this one out, and that's great. And that shouldn't be something that anyone takes issue with. That's kind of why we're doing it. Yeah, that was my brief, not so brief introduction, right? So that's kind of what we're hoping to achieve. But we're also then, we're going to make it fun, right? This is session 0. We've come to play D&D, so we're also going to use the opportunity to introduce our players to our campaign environment, right? And tell them all of the things that they should know going into a campaign. And we need to make that fun as well, because we've got a document here that's got like a lot of details about the world in it. We don't want to just hand our players a 12-page dossier on our world and say, read that, come back next week with an idea for a character, because that's awful, right? No one wants to do that. So we're going to come up with interesting ways to introduce concepts to our players, right? We'll do like a little brief reading, right? We'll write some descriptive text and do a brief reading, right? We might, what I'd like to do together is write like just a paragraph, like a short story about something that's going on, and I would probably make it about the king. Write a little like paragraph short story about something the king's been up to, and then that rather than just saying here's King Reich Flairford, he's a knob, and he's the king, and he thinks he's better than everyone else, and he's never been bested in single combat. Right? We can explain that to him through a very short 5-minute reading to him. Right? We can make a poster that they will have seen around Sunnybrid, right? Explaining the takeover. And then rather than just telling players all this information and saying, like, absorb all this information that I'm firing at you right now, here's a fun poster that's like just like a really basic layout that's explains to the citizens of Sunnybrid that the King's Guard are going away and they're being replaced with Senate Guard. If you've got any issues going forward, you speak to this guy instead of the guy you used to speak to. It should happen fairly seamlessly. Hopefully, it won't interrupt anyone's business and that kind of thing. The players then have that; they can take it away, and they haven't had to make notes, right? And we want to condense all of this into like a couple of hours, and then we're going to make characters together, right? So this is something I would do before. I would make sure my players are aware before they come to session 0, not to not have ideas, but don't come to the session with a fully fleshed out character. Like, I'm going to be a dragonborn sorcerer, and this is going to be his name, and this is going to be his family history, because we want to give our players some information about the world, and then let them use that to hopefully create a character that's more integrated with the society we've created for them. Because it's going to be more fun for everyone if their players are part of the world, right? Rather than bringing a character and just dropping it in our world. If they understand things about the world before they make the character, they can choose to tie their character into the environment. So once they found out about the King's Guard, they could decide that their player used to be a King's Guard and has just lost his job, and now they're going to look for mercenary work because they're out of a job, kind of thing. And that's immediately going to make the game more interesting for everyone, because when you're writing the story, you can include that information and use that to your advantage to hook the players into a storyline, right? So there's a lot going on here, right? And it's I think having a session 0 it gives you the opportunity to just have a more fulfilling experience for everyone, right? Because your players are going to agree and understand what they're getting themselves into. We're all going to agree before we start what we kind of want to get out of playing D&D together. Then we're going to get characters that were created together that fit into the world and make it easier for you as a DM to write storylines, right? Because players want their characters to have meaning, right? And they want to be included in the story. But when they come and bring you like an A4 page of backstory that doesn't fit the world you've created, it's a little bit disheartening as a DM to try and like have to incorporate all that stuff they've written into the world when you hadn't really planned for it. And one final advantage that is coming to mind right now is that it gives you an opportunity to sort of nudge your players towards creating characters that have interacted before. And I don't mean necessarily, and this is entirely up to your players, I don't mean necessarily to have 4 characters who have been in an adventuring party before, but when players are sat at a table and they're all making their characters together in one place, it's a lot easier for them to cooperate and decide that your 2 players over here went to school together, right? And these 2 players over here used to be guards together. And one of those 2 knows one of the 2 that went to school together. Not very well, but they've met before. And then you get rid of that awkward first couple of sessions that you have a lot of the time in D&D where your players are sticking to their guns about being skeptical of each other, right? And that's it's an interesting mechanic for RP that players don't trust each other straight away. And it can be fun to play that kind of campaign, but it makes everything really slow to start because like your players are all sticking to your guns, and as people, as like out of game, as players, they all understand that they're all hampering the game, but they're doing what they think's right, and or then they're RPing, and that's great, but it's not really benefiting anyone in the long run because it just means that like it takes longer for them to agree to work together as a team and do stuff, right? It's in my opinion, it's so much the game is so much more interesting and rewarding when you get to the point where a party have agreed to work together, right? They don't necessarily have to like each other all that well, and they might still not trust each other, but when they can all agree as a group to go this way, then do that, then do this, it just makes everything flow a lot better than when you have at the start 2 players want to go do this and 2 players want to go do that, and they can't agree because they don't like each other enough to communicate about it, right? So that is our session 0, and that is why our session 0. Do we have any questions in chat? Does anyone have anything they want to like? I feel like I've kind of gone over it a lot over the past few weeks, but like the last thing I want to do is have anyone have any kind of like negative opinions about what we're doing and not bring them up, and we can sort of go over why. Because I understand, like, and a lot of it's probably just the way I'm selling it, right? It can sound like a counselling session, right? That we're going to get everyone to sit down and explain their feelings to each other and stuff. And it's like that's not what we're going for. That part of the session should be 2 minutes, right? Of just you're the DM and you've already written some stories, so you're gonna get to go first and say this is the kind of session I'm planning on running. And 99 times out of 100, all of your players are going to look at what you've laid out, and you said we're doing a very like kitschy comedy campaign with some quite challenging combat in it, right? Expect that player characters will die because I'm going to make the combat challenging. If you don't think about encounters before you enter them, you will find that they're very dangerous, and there will be heavy rewards for players who interact well with NPCs, right? That's the kind of thing that I would say. I'd think about it a bit more and script it, right? But that's off the top of my head. That's kind of the sort of thing that I would say at the start. And then your players are going to listen to that, and 99 times out of 100, they're going to go, yeah, that sounds fun to me. But you have that opportunity for them to say, oh, we heard it was going to be like a Cthulhu type campaign, and we've all got our like magnifying glasses, and like we're expecting like a horror, like an investigative horror, and you go, oh right, that's not what I was planning, but is that what you want me to do, right? So if anyone's got any questions, now's the time before we start like talking about what we're literally right now we're gonna make. This is kind of like we're planning to plan for session 0, right? And we're gonna make a list of all of the things that I think we should prepare, and then we can plan the upcoming streams to include all of those things. Like I've mentioned, making a poster, right? So this is going to turn into Art Attack. I'm Neil Buchanan, and this week we're making a Sunnybrid poster for our players to receive as a handout. And we're going to write a descriptive introduction to what Sunnybrid looks like, And then we might even, so this is something I said last week, for anyone who's new, again, I'm getting together a crack team of novice, somewhat experienced, and new D&D players. I'm probably only going to have 4 because of the format, and I'm going to run a session 0 using what we prepare on the stream at some point in the not too distant future, that we can see how well or how poorly our preparation has helped for running a session 0. And I'm probably going to do 4 players because the more I think about it, the more complicated it becomes, right? Because you can have players in a room, and when they're discussing their characters, they can break off and go like talk about it in different areas and like plan character relations and stuff and roll dice and like choose classes and stuff without being together. But if we're going to do it on stream, like you kind of have this scenario where only really one person can talk at a time. So I think doing more than 4 would be challenging. So I'm probably just going to do 4 players, but I'm looking forward to doing that. Hopefully you're looking forward to watching it. But I derail myself all the time. So what I was saying was, if I was doing this IRL and not on the 4-person streaming, trying to fit it into like a few hours format, I would probably create like a very basic combat encounter as well, just to let our players roll some dice, right? And like it's not something I would put much thought into. Just a couple of goblins per player, or like 1.5 goblins per player. When they've decided how they're going to arrive in the town, if they decide they're arriving by sea, have them try and board the ship and stuff, and just let them try out the new character and roll some dice, because that's where everyone's come, right? But I'm not doing that on stream because that'd be crazy. Big shout out to the people who do stream D&D live. That's crazy to me. Stressful enough in a room with 6 people, with 2,000 people watching you as well, and those numbers are very much underselling it. I think we appear to be questionless, which I hope means everyone's on board, right? And not that everyone's too scared to ask one, right? It's all good. We're just gonna encourage being adults, I guess, and not. I mean, we can play with children, but quite often children are more adult than adults when we talk about social cooperation and stuff. And it's a good way to like set a precedent as well, because you want to be. It's kind of your job as a DM to arbitrate any kind of disputes, right? And by starting a session in this manner, we're telling our players that we are the arbitrator, right? We've opened up by asking everyone's opinions and stuff, and that like we want to run a campaign, especially if we're playing with people who've never met before. Potentially, we want to run a campaign where people feel comfortable coming to you as the DM and telling you that something's happened they're not comfortable with, right? Because that will happen in D&D from time to time, and not necessarily through people's fault either. Just it will happen, and you want to be approachable, right? It can even be you, right? You want your players to know that if there's a topic that you're covering in your material that they're not comfortable with, that they can talk to you after the game and say, like, this campaign's getting real dark, and like I'm not sure I'm comfortable with it, kind of thing. Like we should all be comfortable with talking to each other about stuff. So we're questionless. We're moving on. So first and foremost, right? We need an introduction. This is our session 0 checklist, right? And this is all the things that we're going to prepare over the coming weeks to make sure we're ready for our live session 0. I'm going to start with a GM introduction. Hi, I'm Roosblitz, and I'm really struggling to type today. And I will be your DM for this campaign. You could be running a campaign with an alternating DM, and these are all the things that you need a session 0 for, right? You want to discuss beforehand that we're running this campaign, and we expect that everyone will take their turn to DM, like alternating on weeks. It's just really good to have conversations before you start, right? I'll be your DM for this campaign. Like I plan to run whatever, right? Campaign, right? Like include details about your preferred style or whatever. I would mention that it's likely to be low fantasy. You're not gonna encounter a city that floats in the sky, kind of thing. So that's just not the way I write fantasy. looking at preferred style, like the genre, etc. And then a brief like what you expect of your players, right? Let's lay down some ground rules, and I don't mean rules to be like boring and rules is rules, right? I don't think like I wouldn't be the sort of person to be like we're banning for like not there's anything wrong with this, but I wouldn't be the sort of player to say we're banning phones at the table and everyone has to have their own player's handbook, and if you don't bring your character sheet, you're out, and all this kind of stuff. But like whatever rules that you think like you require, like I expect at the bare minimum that if you're setting a schedule, right? This is another good point, right? Mention the schedule at the start. We're playing every other week on Tuesday nights, and the minimum I expect from you is if you can't turn up one week to let me know at least a day before, and to not be calling last minute and saying, "Oh, I can't make it," or just not bothering showing up. Right? I've put a lot of work into writing the campaign and putting sessions together and stuff, and I would like you to, as a player, to be responsible for time management and letting me know that you can't attend, right? That kind of thing. So, like, not to parent our players, but just to like, if there is anything that really irks you as a DM, like let your players know, right? Like, don't chew with your mouth open. Please. People shouldn't need to be told that, but that kind of thing. We're not trying to make this sound like we're interning our players into a prison, right? And here's the rules. You get 20 minutes of yard time a day or whatever. We just want to we want to all enter this like agreeing that no player is going to listen to you say, I want you to at least let me know the day before if you can't show up to a session, and not be letting me know 5 minutes before that you're not turning up today, kind of thing. Nobody's going to listen to you saying that and think you're being unreasonable. And obviously, unless it's a prison RPG, well, there you go. But then we're talking about in-game. Let's not confuse tabletop and real world mechanics, right? Yeah, no one's going to. And obviously, we're also reasonable. If there's a reason that someone can't attend, that if there's an emergency and they can only give you the 10 minutes notice, you're not going to be unreasonable and say, well, I told you, you're out the door. I told you before we started, right? Just, calling up 5 minutes before a session and saying like, oh, I'm just a bit tired, kind of thing. Not going to fly, right? There's a 3-strike system and then you're out, right? I rolled a nat 13 on parenting just then. Nat 13. How did you get on? Was it bedtime? Natural 13. What's your do you have proficiency in parenting? Parenting has got to be a wisdom modifier, right? Wisdom. Just having it's potentially charisma. I think there's probably an age where parenting falls to charisma rather than wisdom, right? There's like a switch over. It becomes a charisma trait, not a wisdom one. I think wisdom. And are you proficient? I have my own opinion on whether you're proficient, and I'll let you know. I'll let you know after you. Yeah. So we're just laying everything out on the table, right? We're all here to have fun. I can only add it when not in heavy armor. That's exactly what I was going to say. It's not. I was just going to say you are proficient, but it makes sense that you wouldn't be in heavy armor. Children are quick, It's a fair amount of dex. Yeah. You're right. You're not wrong. And when you're not wrong, you're right. I think so. Here's my opinion. I think it falls to wisdom, right? But it's one of those weird abilities where you can substitute dex based on the specific scenario, right? Multi-skill. Yeah, so it's like, in certain situations where like someone will be grabbing you, and it'll be like an athletics. It's like a athletics check, or whatever. Or like a better example is like an intimidation check, right? Is it charisma or is it strength? You can substitute strength sometimes based on like who you're trying to intimidate. Yeah, grandparenting wisdom. No, you can hand them back. Yeah. I'm still, so I've said it now and I'm going to stick to it. I'm going to commit because you know we need to, as in D&D, we need to make a decision at the table and not hold things up, and then we can move on. I'm saying it's a wisdom skill, but if you can RP me, if you can give me a good RP reason why you can substitute your Dex or wisdom, Dex or charisma for this role, then I will let you do that. But as you said earlier, it is not. You can't add your proficiency if you're in heavy armor. Because that just makes sense, right? Yeah. So there's so many things that I would include in this, that I'm going to include in this little like willkommen speech, right? And it's not all going to be focused on this stuff that could be perceived as negative, right? There's like, am I gonna run like milestone leveling, right? Like, are you gonna, like, this is anything you can, like, these are just things you can tell your players before you start. I'm gonna run milestone leveling unless anyone's got, if you all sit there and tell me like you all really want to do XP leveling, then that's like something that I'm open to. But like, unless anyone disagrees, I'm probably gonna run milestone leveling, and I'm gonna run. This is how I run inspiration, right? Like, I was thinking the other day about like an inspiration system that allows the players to, once per session, the players can choose to award inspiration. Because inspiration's like, as a DM, like, it's a great tool, and it's also one of those things that like it's really easy to forget about when you're looking through all your papers and trying to like manage a big combat. And anything that you can like put on the players to be like, guys, if you've noticed someone's done something really cool or whatever, can you bring up that, like, you have the opportunity once per game to, as a team, go, what Pontus just did was really funny. Can we use our team inspiration to give him inspiration for that? And then because they brought it up, you can just override it as a DM and say, like, save it, like, you can have inspiration from me. Because anyway, that's another thing that you can bring that up. This is how I want to run inspiration. I'm gonna, and you're saying this is what I'm gonna do unless you guys tell me you want it to be another way, right? This is their opportunity to say, oh, like, I always run milestone leveling and I've really wanted to give XP a try, and can we do that? And you're probably just going to say yes because that's what the players want, right? But just as much information as you can throw down, right? Like, talk about schedule and stuff. Schedule, leveling method, house rules, inspiration, etc. Right? Just want to let our players know what's going on, and then we're going to introduce our players to the world, right? Our players to the same setting. So here's like a this is where we're going into like a welcome pack, right? Physical description of Sunnybrid, because we know our players are going to arrive at Sunnybrid imminently, right? And the first thing that's going to happen in like session 1 would be we describe Sunnybrid to them. So why don't we just do that now and just assume that's already happened? We haven't decided how they're getting there yet, but we can tell them what the town looks like because it's going to help them make decisions about their character, because they're going to learn about the docks and like the lighthouse chapel on the hill and the garrison and what have you, right? Sunnybrid. Sunnybrid. We're gonna have a short story to sell central attention. We're gonna write a little jaunt about Big Reich Flairford. Big Reich Flairford. That's the spelling, right? Don't be intimidated, right? No one's expecting Tolkien to be sat at the table and to just whip out his little notebook and read a paragraph that he's written. Like, your players are going to appreciate the time that you've put into this anyway, and we're going to do it together, and we're going to see we're really judgmental about my efforts on writing a very brief, like, short story that's going to set up the story, and we're going to realise that I'm probably terrible at it, but it's going to serve a purpose, and like we don't need to be gods, right? We're here to learn, and we're going to get better by doing this. The 100th time you do a session 0, maybe you are the next Tolkien, right? And your ability to write descriptive prose is pro, right? But it's just an entertaining way of, like, our players are coming and committing their time to this session that's not really a session. They want to play D&D because they want to roll dice and they want to do perception checks and stuff. And we're asking them to come for one session where they're not doing any of that. They're going to get to create a character, right? But we're rewarding them for sitting and listening to our boring speech about everyone playing the same, like, playing for the same reasons and stuff. We're rewarding them with something they get to listen to. They get to listen to our short story and internally judge our efforts and stuff. We're going to give them the brief description of Sunnybrid, and they get to think about, like, the backstory for their players, their character. Physical handouts, right? Sunnybrid. If anyone's got any better ideas, by the way, just toss them into chat. This is just stuff that I've, like, been bouncing around as I've been thinking of. This is a really weird format because obviously if I was doing this myself, I would just do it, right? So, but I'm kind of trying to think of, like, I want to think of things live as we stream to include, but I also want to have thought about it beforehand, if that makes sense, that I've got backup so we're not just sat here in silence, like doing nothing, right? If you guys don't have any particular ideas and I don't have any ideas pre-planned, then we're just not going to do anything. But your ideas are more important than mine, if that makes sense. So yeah, so I had this idea for, like, a poster that explains the transition, right? Sunnybrid poster explaining the handover of, is it Sword Point? And I had this idea. So my other half has recently started playing Fable 3, and I loved Fable 3. It's like, it's one of those, I'm living vicariously through her because I wish I could play it for the first time again. And the loading screens in that game are just, like, amazing. So they're just filled with these, like, they're like propaganda posters, and they're relevant to what's going on in the story. And just looking at them, that's where I originally had the idea, because, like, I want this propaganda poster that's explaining that it's all good, we're taking over and everything's going to be fine. And then the players can look at that and they can make a decision for themselves whether they think that that's, like, an honest thing or, like, a bad thing. Spear Point, thank you. I apologise for Spear Point Garrison to the Senate officer, right? And that's something fun. Like, we're gonna make this poster. I'm gonna do it on my iPad. We're gonna draw it. That's gonna be fun. You might not have the inclination to draw a poster for yourself, and that's not a problem, right? You can think of your own ways to create handouts and things. But there's something that I'm capable of doing that I will do, because it's something that I can hand my players on session 0 and be like, I've invested into this. Like, I've invested into this campaign already. Here, look at this. You can have this. You can take it home. It saves you making notes on this specific topic, and it gives you the Spear Point Garrison's not there. Gonna have to add that to the list. Spear Point Garrison. Where am I? Yeah, sorry. So it's something I can give my players as like here's a physical thing you get to look at. It's going to hold their attention for a little bit, and they're going to look at it, and hopefully they look at it and go like, oh, like my DM's putting effort into this, and he's asking me to put in the effort to turn up every week, right? So maybe it's the least I can do, right? But just really getting them invested before they've even made their character, right? Because we also want them to make a character that's invested in the world, and that's going to help us, right? So giving them like a hook like that is going to help them help hopefully get their ideas flowing. Because you'll find that even if you tell your players not to come with an idea, you're going to have players occasionally turn up and they've already decided in their head exactly what class and race they're going to be. And we're trying to tease that out of people and be like, look, like there's a world here that you can ingratiate yourself into. So if you're like willing to meet me halfway, then we can write a story together, right? D&D is cooperative storytelling, and it's your story as well as mine. And if you meet the story that I've already half written, then you're going to get a more enriching experience out of it. So a physical handout for a poster. And unless you guys have got any specific ideas, I think like that's probably enough just to get our players going, right? Because after that, we're going to then explain to them that they can now create characters together, right? Oh, hang on. So we want to introduce races to our players, right? We have because we have some specific ideas about the races in our game. We want to introduce those to players first, because we don't want to sit there and say you can't be a Dragonborn, because the Dragonborn are like, as a Dragonborn you're going to be ostracized, right? We want to give them all the information, and then hopefully your players will avoid being a race that's going to be difficult to manage as a DM. They probably will choose to be one anyway, but you're giving them the opportunity to make your life easier beforehand. I try my best not to pre-write characters, but more often end up with a few loose ideas that can be more. Yeah, your Pontus is a very creative mind, right, and has a lot of ideas, and that's not the ideas that like you having that like bank of ideas means that you're able to like pick one that fits, kind of thing, right? Like, there's nothing wrong with having an idea of like a backstory for a character, as long as you're willing to like mold it a little bit to thing. Argus Three Fathers being foremost. I actually want to play a campaign with Argus Three Fathers in it, but that's like a very like as detailed as Argus Three Fathers is as a backstory. It's like it's also very generic. You could slip that character into our world like really easily, because like everything about him is like relevant only to his own family. So you could fit that into our campaign really easily, and then just find ways to ingratiate him better into the story that exists. One of his fathers was a separatist. One of his fathers is pro-Senate, and the other one's on the fence, right? And then boom, we got a character that's ingratiated into the world. And Argus Three Fathers is gonna mean nothing to anyone but us two. And I'm happy to keep it that way. Like, people feel free to ask Pontus in chat if you want to know more. Very interesting character that has yet to see the light of RPG day. Yeah, we're saying Argus Three Fathers could be a she. Could be any race, any class, right, and could exist in any RPG setting. Yeah, so yeah, it's. I think you tend to find this more often with like players who are new, that like they'll come to they know they're going to play D&D for the first time, and they've got an idea in their head of what playing D&D is, but that's not based in reality. That's like their interpretation of something they've never experienced. So then they put a lot of pressure on themselves to have an idea before they arrive, and they come up with like a really convoluted like character like loosely based off of like a TV show character or a film character or whatever, and then like they want to play that character because they've been thinking about it for weeks because they've been excited to play D&D, and it's like it's really restrictive because they've told you everything about their character's past, and it's like it's the onus is then on you to try and find some way of, without breaking everything they've written, like making it actually relevant to what's going on. So we want everyone to have an open mind so that they can play. Tiefling necromage who hates dairy farmers. Yeah, just oddly specific, like necromancer. Oh, there's always a necromancer. Like that's a flag. It's an immediate flag. Just sit down and talk to your players. Like this is what this whole session's about. When a player turns around and says like, I know you said not to come up with a character, but I've got this really good idea for like a tiefling necromancer that has secretly killed all of the other players in my party and is actually using them as puppets. You get to take that player like to a side and not publicly like have this discussion and say like, look, I personally don't think that's a good idea, and here's why. Right? Because we want to let everyone else have agency over their own character and what have you. And then you can talk to them about how you can use some of their ideas and make a character together that fits in your world, and they still got to like come up with the main idea, but we're gonna like trim it back to be more cooperative with everyone else, right? I want to be a rogue that I'm actually secretly stealing from all of the party, and I'm gonna kill them all before we fight the big bad. Like, there are ways to play that kind of character in a game, but when someone says that and you're playing a game with 4 new players, you can take them to a side and explain that's potentially going to create. There is no way to do PvP that's not going to result in someone in some way feeling like they've had something taken away from them. And there are ways when you've got higher, like more experienced players who all know each other to do it in a way that everyone's going to be entertained. But like, yeah, you can avoid these things like early on, right? By just being open about it. So we're also going to do another handout that's like. So an idea I've had for this is like, so the premise is I want to give them a handout that explains the races to them, so that they can have the information ahead of time. It's probably not a good idea to be. I'm sure it was Dragonborn, right? It's not a good idea to be a Dragonborn in our world. We're not saying you can't be a Dragonborn, but you're going to make life harder for you and your party if you choose to be a Dragonborn. So we let them have that information before they start. And then as a party, if someone says like, look, I just really want to be a Dragonborn, and the other members of the party, knowing that that's going to make their life more difficult, say, you know what, Jimmy's a good kid and he really wants to be a Dragonborn, let's let him be a Dragonborn. Everyone's agreed to that kind of ahead of time, right? We're not trying to gate people out of doing things they want to do, but like we want everyone to be aware that Jimmy's making a decision that's going to affect everyone, so everyone kind of has to be in like on board at least, right? Would you ever have a recommended reading list for the campaign? I'm assuming you mean like for like similar kind of like worlds built, like worlds that have been built, right? Like this story has a very similar like story to ours, and if that's the case, I probably wouldn't recommend players read it. I'd be more than happy to say to players, have you read this book? Because there's a lot of stuff that I've like drawn inspiration from in there. But like I wouldn't be like, here, divert 40 hours of your time to reading this novel that I like. I really like Wheel of Time, and there's loads of them. So read them all before. I want everyone back here next week having read the first 2 books, or you're out. That's it. That counts as that's 3 strikes, and you're out straight away. No, I wouldn't do that. But maybe articles that explain your DM style if you have ever had any. Yeah, again, like so, like that's the kind of thing. There's no harm in giving that to players. I'd be careful about how I worded it so that they were aware I'm not telling them they have to, kind of thing. It's like if you've got the time, you might be interested in reading this, but really don't feel pressured into like, oh, I need to put aside one night next week because the DM's a real hard ass and he's given us all homework and we've got to watch this video that explains like on my DM style or whatever. Yeah, like I'd be more than happy to say like, if you have you ever heard of this person or whatever, and I'm very similar to them. Like, do you know who Matthew Colville is? Because like I've personally learned a lot from that guy. If you don't worry about it. Like, that is cold coffee now. Cold though, not warm. There's like a inverse bell chart for coffee where it's like it's hot and it's good, and then it's like it very quickly deteriorates as it reaches lukewarm, and then when it gets back to cold, it's okay again, right? That way for you, I guess. Yeah, so handout that explains our races, and I figured, given the context of our campaign, it'd be really good to we can mix our deities in with that, right? Because that's a very easy way of like we can without giving our players like pages and pages of content, we could make again like an A4 poster size like this is the god most commonly affiliated with humans. This is what people think of. This is what other races think of humans, and like in almost in a grid, right? Where there's just we can write 3 sentences about each like deity and god, deity and race combo, and you're saying to your players, here's like 400 words for you to read, not like an encyclopedia to work your way through. Our races and deities and their relationships. And then that's useful information for a player who wants to play a cleric, right? They want to choose a deity, and here's a list of them, right? And again, like if a player wants to choose something outside of that list, like we're not saying they can't. It just we need to have another conversation about it, right? Approach me and say, I want to believe in a deity that doesn't strictly exist in your world, or can there be a deity for this? Because I noticed that I really want to worship a deity of pumpkins, and I noticed that pumpkins isn't on your list. It obviously is on our list because we've thought about the important stuff. But you could say, oh, actually, yeah, I hadn't thought about that, and then look at the list and be like, I think that realm fits with this god, don't you? And they can say, well, you know, I think it fits into this one better or whatever. And there's a common theme here of like cooperation, right? Yeah, so, and that's, again, like, that's not something that's going to bombard our players with, like, here's a list of 15 deities and a very short description of the deity and the race. Like, it's not an overwhelming amount of information for them. And we can do it as a table exercise where everyone gets one of these, right? Because we're not saying to our players, read this now, you need to have absorbed it in 5 minutes, right? You're going to hand it out, we can read it together, and then you can keep that again. When you're sat at home on Wednesday night and you're thinking about the upcoming game, and you're thinking, oh, what was the deal with halflings again? You can go and get your little folder out, and I've printed out a thing for you that's like, oh yeah. And again, in game, the first time your players meet a turtle, they've got a sheet that's like, oh right, yeah, turtles are scavengers, and this is their god. And like you've taken a little bit of pressure off them in the early sessions to write a load of notes that you've given them like some really basic information. It's not overwhelming, hopefully, and gets them on board. And then, boom, you've now got a brief introduction to the town. You know what's going on in the world. You know what like the overarching tension is in the world, right? You've got a list of races. You've got a list of like races in our RPG system, and a little bit of an overview of what they're all about and the deities that are associated with them, and the information that there's like cross worship and stuff, but the majority of that race would worship the respective deity. And then this is the part where I would explain to your players life's going to be better for everyone if you have some relationship with the other players at the start. That's not to say you all need to know each other, but as a DM, I would suggest that you all pick one person to know at least. And if your players decide, nah, to hell with that, we're all gonna know each other already, or one person says, I really want to be like a lone wolf and not know my party, right? Then we're not excluding any of these options. We're just giving players like the information ahead of time. And you now know this very small amount of information about the world that your player's going to have lived in all their life, and that gives you the ability to, like, where's your player from? We've got a map. That's another point, right? We've already got a map. So, map handout. They can look at their map and say, I want to come from this city. No problem. Then immediately your players are integrating themselves into our world straight away, just by having this like session 0, and then they can sit together and like bounce ideas off each other, and players who are interested in this kind of thing can then also discuss like race, can discuss like class. The other one, class composition, right? If people are that way inclined, then they can discuss. We need a spellcaster and we need a cleric. We need a healer, and like, well, we've got 2 players that want to be rogues. Does one of you mind being a ranger or whatever, so that we can track better and whatever? Like, you're always going to have a better experience. Like, you're going to have a better, like a more cohesive group when the players have decided together who to be, right? You don't want that situation where you turn up at session 1 and you've got 4 rogues and you're like, oh, by the way, 4 rogue campaign. Like, I'd love to run a 4 rogue campaign, but you want to know it's a 4 rogue campaign before you start, right? Because you'd write a very different story if you knew all your players were going to be rogues. But that's like, and that's why we're here, right? Your players might all turn around and go, we had this idea that we'd all be rogues, and you go, oh, like, I'm more than happy to do that. And then you can go away and go, well, like, what can I change about the world and the story to, like, well, I mean, you wouldn't really need to change anything about the world. You can go away immediately, and before session 1, you know that your players are more likely to go to like the inn, and they're going to want to do the jobs that earn them money rather than getting involved in the politics of what's going on, right? So you start fleshing out Wanyola, who's our smuggler character, because you're like, man, these guys are going to have met Wanyola by session 3 easily. That's all they're going to be interested in. Is they're going to need defense and stuff, right? So yeah, like, it's all cooperation. So then, and this is where you get a breather. It's where you get to drink a coffee and have a glass of water and stuff. Let the players, but you're going to be there for them to bounce ideas off as well, right? Like when a player says, "Oh, I want to be like a noble's daughter and come from this city," then you can immediately say, "Well, hang on a minute. Like, I've got nobles. I've written nobles who live in that city. Let's." Wanyola should be a command. Oh, there we go. Hey. Yeah, so you can. Nope, I'm gone. Yeah, so you're there to help your players. In that situation, we can say, oh, actually, rather than you just writing a blank, making up a new name for, like, I've actually got a character who could be your parent, and here's the little bit of information I've written about them. And they can say, oh, yeah, like, I can be that. And then immediately, like, their player actually exists in your world rather than being like a intruder kind of thing. Create characters. Be on hand to offer like advice, I guess, is the and insight is more important, right? World we've created so that their players, so that their characters can be well integrated with the story. It's going to be so much better when you're writing your story, or when you're writing your encounters, to reach the end of a storyline to find out that the noble that's a member of the council that you were trying to overthrow or whatever, like the noble was a member of the Senate that we were working to like supplant or whatever turns out to be your cleric's father, and you're like, oh, how do we not see this coming? Whoa, kind of thing. And that's because they've like integrated their player into the story from the start, rather than you at like back of house having to like retroactively try and make these things happen. So yeah, so then, so yeah, part of this as well is they like just deciding their origins, right? And more importantly for us, how they've arrived at Sunnybrid, right? They might decide they've been there the whole time, and because you've given them this information, they know about the town and they've always lived there. Or they might decide like they're arriving by a specific mode of transport or whatever. And that's just given us that little bit more information so that when we start session 1, we can write the arriving by boat spiel, right? And then, depending on time, I would just have like a really basic, as I said earlier, like just have 1.5 goblins per player encounter once everyone's filled out the character sheet, if you've still got time. You literally, it doesn't matter how they're arriving, right? They can come in on a trade cart or by boat or like just arriving through the forest or whatever. It doesn't require a lot of setup on the fly to just put. I mean, you don't even need minis, right? You should just base your characters with you're attacked by so many goblins, and it's not going to be like the most entertaining encounter they've ever had. They're just going to be like getting a feel for their characters and rolling a few dice and what have you. How do you deal with a PC declaring they have exorbitant wealth? Hey, look, you're finally awake. Yeah, the greatest RPG intro of all time. But they're all the one person in the cart who wasn't awake, and then you get to explain to them about the Stormcloaks and the Imperials, right? And we've hooked them into the like story straight away. A PC declaring they have exorbitant wealth is something that I would. So for the campaign we've written here, I don't think that's like too big a deal, right? Like I don't think that like having tons of money is going to impact the start of the campaign at all. Because there are other ways as a DM that you can restrict access to items. Money. Here's like the greatest myth in D&D is that money's useful, right? Like, because your DM is ultimately going to decide what stuff costs and whether it's available, right? If you decide that like health potions are 10 GP and one player decides they're a millionaire, that doesn't mean they can go to the general store and buy 1 million health potions because the store owner's only got 2. So it's not that big an issue. But I've run a campaign that has where, and this is a nightmare by the way, just as like a heads up, if it's something you want to do. There's definitely different ways I would handle it if I started that campaign now. But a campaign where poverty is like a tension of the story. So if a player had like unlimited wealth in that campaign, it would be really restrictive. But this is where we would go full. I'm sorry, there's no like hack. This isn't going to be like a really interesting like inside tip. But the whole point of this session is for this kind of thing, right? And if I were to be running that campaign and someone were to want to be exorbitantly wealthy, I would take them to a side and explain to them like, look, I'm running this campaign where abject poverty is going to be like a central tension, and I want you as a party to have to like deal with the poverty of like the peasants and stuff, and I want you to work on interesting ways that you can help people. And if a player has access to infinite wealth, then that's going to like potentially diminish something in the campaign. So is there a way that we can have your character still be like the noble that you want to be, but maybe not have that like crazy access to money? And if they're a reasonable person, they'd be more like, you'd hope they'd be more than happy to like work with you on that. Because I want to have loads of money. I don't think is like a particularly interesting character trait, right? Being a noble is, being born of wealth or whatever is. But like just someone saying that like having loads of money isn't a character trait. It's just like it's just something that the character potentially has access to. Like you can still play a wealthy character. You can still play a character that has all of the characteristics of someone who is wealthy without them having the money, right? And that's potentially more interesting anyway. So I would just sort of discuss how like that we're working together, and that's kind of might create a bit of an issue for me. In days gone by, I might have suggested that as the DM, you have the ability to like get rid of that wealth, right? You can just decide that everything's getting like someone in their family has been like found to be embezzling or whatever, and the family's lost their. There was a forged bit of paperwork that gave the family their name and stuff, and that everything gets repossessed by the monarchy because they're fraudsters and whatever. But like that creates a feel bad scenario for your player. So I wouldn't suggest doing that. That's something I would actively suggest. That's like that kind of like easy win for a DM to just be like, well, you've created a character with loads of money, and I'm going to decide you don't have money now. Is like immediately going to create a situation where your players like feel like you've just taken something away from them because you have, right? So it's better to discuss it first and say like, even if like a player's got loads of money, then like, that doesn't mean they necessarily have loads of money on them, right? A player could be ridiculously wealthy but live in a city, but come from a city that's miles away, and you can have the character start with like a heavy coin purse, but this is D&D, right? There's not an ATM they can go to and just withdraw thousands of GP. Like they need to find like somewhere where they can get accredited for money to have access to it. So like it shouldn't be an issue with the player to discuss that with them and say like, can we dial down the amount of money you actually have access to while we're playing the campaign, and we can have you later on if you're really interested in being wealthy, we can have you at some point later in the campaign arrive at the city you live in, and at that point we can have you Scrooge McDuck in a room filled with gold coins, right? If that's what they really want. Like there's always ways around it. So if you work together, yeah, very good question. Thanks for asking it. And I hope my answer's a good one. As I say, like I would never profess to be an expert. I'm someone who's DM'd a fair bit and likes doing it and wants to get better myself. So that's what I would do. And it's a good question because it emphasises why we're doing this. Why I personally feel the Session Zero is like a very powerful tool for a DM. Because we can talk about all this stuff beforehand. Like you want your players to, like it's like you're all agreeing beforehand that like this is what we're all expecting to get out of this experience. And your player having loads of money isn't gonna ruin my epic story that I wrote. So please don't. Or let's meet halfway and work out a solution that works for everyone. Yeah. So where was I? Yeah, so sorry, I was at the point of like, if there's time, I would just let the players roll some dice, just let them fight a couple of goblins, just to because like, as soon as you've made your character and you've filled out that character sheet, you just want to like use the cool abilities that you picked, right? And we can let them do that. We can throw a couple of goblins at them. We're like, let's not throw anything with a particularly high challenge rating at them. Just we can fudge all our rolls behind the screen and just let it be a massacre because it's what the players want. What's it called? There's a name for like a going Nova, right? Like you write encounters that are designed to let your players go Nova, right? If the players know that there's a very specific set of circumstances where the players are facing an encounter where they know they're going to get to long rest afterwards. So like there's no holds barred, so they can use all of their abilities and like just cash in everything they've got. And like that's a real fun experience for players to just like they don't have to save anything for later. They don't have to be sensible and like ration themselves. They can just go, right, I can do this once a day and I can do this twice a day, and I'm going to do all of them. What changes would you make to a session 0 for experienced PCs? I think the overall format would be the same, but I think I would just do a lot less interfering, I guess. Is there like I would put a lot more. I'd give them more information, but not force them to read it, kind of thing. Like in this, we're talking about giving them like, here's your sheet of the races, and here's your poster that explains a little bit of what's going on with the central tension. But I would give them like a lot more, like I'd probably write like a brief overview of like the nearest cities and stuff, and like what their affiliation is, like their affiliation with like separatists and loyalists and stuff, and yeah, just give like and I'd have like probably just have like a folder on the table. Not folder makes it sound like a written encyclopedia, but I'd have a stack of like a little bit more information on the table that's there, and just say to them like, you can read that, you can not read it, but there's like more information for you there. And then I would just be less hands-on with them when they're making their characters, because I'd trust more experienced PCs to. What am I trying to say? So when I said that your player characters creating when they're sat down creating the characters, you can then interject and be like, you want to be a noble's daughter, I've got a noble for you, kind of thing. I would trust more experienced PCs to create their own house of nobles and consider what their affiliation is in the world, whether they're like a separatist or a loyalist and stuff. And I'd give them more agency to write more of the story. And that's just because I would trust them to, like, it's not as much that I trust them to do it. It's more that I believe that they would want to, if that makes sense. Like, if it's someone's first ever game of Dungeons and Dragons, I don't think they've arrived at the table wanting to write an entire family into the story, whereas an experienced PC might want the agency to do that. And like, they've got the same options as everyone else. It's like you give them the same options as everyone else, but you give them a little bit more playroom. Right? If they want to sit in the sandbox and go like, here are the Montagues, right? I've written an entire family of nobles into the story, and I want them to be loyalists. And they can hand me an A4 sheet of paper with all this written on it, and I can say, great, like, because I trust that they'll have thought about the nuts and bolts of how they interact with the world, right? Because they're not going to go, it's a family of Dragonborn. That I keep it's like I've got a real problem with Dragonborn, but it's just an example of like what we've written. They're not going to give me a family of Dragonborn that are the king's right hand men, because they're going to understand that that's not likely to be the case, right? Yeah, I'd keep the structure the same, and I'd just give them more time to, like, give them more agency with like making changes to what I've done, right? And then also, I wouldn't fudge the rolls when they're fighting the goblins. I'd make it possible for them to die in that encounter, because like, you know what you've got yourselves into. I've explained at the top of the session that I want player death to be a real possibility. So you don't even fight a little pack of goblins without worrying about them getting a crit. Again, good question, and it's kind of taken us to the 2-hour mark. You know, I think we're kind of at a point where, so this checklist is kind of what we want to work on, right? And in terms of the session, like, we're kind of at the end of what I'd expected to have like written down, I guess. That right, the running a little encounter for your players to let them roll some dice is like very much the end of like where I would end, like wet the pallets and send them all the way. They've all got a time and a date for the next session, and hopefully they've enjoyed it, and they got a very short encounter, and they're hoping to come back and do more, right? A little addendum. If they're more experienced PCs, I'd give them the option to like talk to people as well. Like, I'd probably have like a couple of NPCs prepared that they could engage with before arriving. But that's just like another little. Like, we could do that on the fly for the less experienced players if they decide they want to do it, but it's not something I would have had prepared. If we've got new players, I wouldn't have prepared that an NPC expecting them to want to talk to them. Right? So I would just be more. I guess I would just be more prepared and more open to their ideas. Yeah, so that's how I would end the session, and then hopefully you've got them coming back next week. They've all written the characters. You, more importantly, have observed them creating the characters and know lots about their backstory. So you now have a week to go away and make any changes to session 1 that incorporate those ideas, because we want our players to know immediately on day 1 that we care about what they've added to the story, because it's their story too. And I would then, this is a fairly important note that I guess I'm going to add to it. So there's a time between sessions, right? And this is worth mentioning at the start, right? This is another thing we should mention at the top of the session, that open up a line of communication, right? Maybe whether you create a Discord or like a group chat or whatever, so you have access to talking to the players and they have access to you between sessions, right? And set boundaries for that, right? If you can message me anytime you want about the campaign and ask me any questions you want, and I will answer them like when I've got time to. That doesn't mean call my house at 3 a.m. because you've had an idea, kind of thing, right? Just like open up that line of communication so you can talk to them as well. Because one thing you're going to want to do between sessions, you're going to go home and you're going to be laid in bed and you're going to think about, like one person had mentioned that she wanted to be a rogue that had an affiliation with a secret society, right? And you're laid in bed and you think, damn, it'd be really good if she was linked to this organisation that we've created, right? And you want to be able to message them and say, like, no big deal, but like, what do you think about, again, like, it's cooperative. What do you think about being a part of this organisation? You said you wanted to, like, know people, right? And it'd be really interesting for you to know. And if they turn around and say, yes, like, I'm open to that sounds good to me, then you can ask them, like, do you want like a brief description of that organisation, what they go up to, and if they're interested in like doing their homework, kind of thing, if that's something that they would enjoy and they want to be prepared for the session, then you would then have access to like send them additional resources between games. So make sure you have a reasonable for sharing resources between games. And your players are going to make that decision for you, right? Your players are going to let you know whether they're the kind of players who want to do homework or whether they're the kind of players who only want to show up once a week. And both are fine, but personally as a DM, if a player shows that interest in like getting more information, we've already thought about all this stuff, right? So if a player wants to know about it, like let's give them the info, right? And also, you'll find yourself later on in the campaign in a situation where it's Thursday night and you're playing on Friday, and you're sat there thinking, I have no idea which door my players are going to go in tomorrow, right? If they're at a junction and you don't know where they're going to go, it can help you prepare in your sessions to just send a little message to the group and say, like, oh guys, which way do you think you're going tomorrow? Are you going to this town or are you going in the cave? Because like, I know I've got a skeleton of what's going to happen whichever way you go, but I know if you can decide now, then it makes my life a little bit easier, please. Right, let's all work together, right? So that's that. So we now have our session 0 checklist. Congrats, round of applause in chat for us for doing our homework, right? So now what's going to happen over the next couple of weeks is we're gonna go full Neil Buchanan. We're going to art attacks and posters. We're going to create handouts for our players. We're going to talk about like the nuts and bolts of this stuff as well. Like I'm gonna go through where I would get my map printed because I love physical handouts. right? And they're dirt cheap. Like I live in the UK, so it might be different elsewhere, but I doubt it. Like we can get multiple full colour copies of that map printed out for like less than £2 delivered, right? Because it'll go in an envelope and it goes by letterpost. So like, it's obviously these are things that are optional to you. Like it shouldn't cost you money to be a DM, but if you enjoy that kind of thing, like it really doesn't break the bank to be able to just like hand out a thing. So you can, or you can trace maps. If you want to save money, you could trace the maps yourself, right? To hand out multiple copies, or just if you've hand drawn it, just have the one and leave it on the table for your players to like look at together, and appoint someone in the team to be like the handout person. They have the person who's the most organised, who has the folder for the group handouts, so that you don't have to make this stuff more than once. You can draw a poster by hand, and it can look like a third grade effort. It doesn't really matter. Your players are going to appreciate having it. So over the next few weeks, we're going to make all this stuff in the checklist, and we're going to put ourselves in a position where we are 100% comfortable that we are ready to run a session 0, and then we, mostly me, but with chat being on board to help, we're going to run our own session 0 for a group of 4 players live on air. So how exciting is that? I'm excited. I'm really nervous, but I'm also very excited about it. So hopefully you are too. Hopefully that'll make for quite entertaining viewing. And we're also gonna. I made a promise last week that at some point I'm going to draw our map of Sunnybrid, which is going to become one of these handouts, right? So I'm going to do a separate stream one night, on a weeknight, here's my promise. When we stream next Sunday, 6 p.m. GMT, 6 till 8, I promise that next week I will give you a date for the drawing a map stream. So it'll probably be like that following week. I'll do like a weeknight stream. And we're just going to hang out, chill. It's going to be very chilled out because I'm going to be focusing on drawing. We'll do like, Q&As and stuff if anyone's got any questions to ask, and I'll draw a map. But over the next couple of weeks, we're going to literally start at the top of this list and go through it one item at a time and get it ready, and then talk about how we're going to use it and stuff. And we're going to hang out and we're going to chat and we're going to name stuff, because the closer we get to session 0, the more we're going to have map stream hype. Thank you very much. I'm really excited about that as well. Actually, I do really enjoy drawing. I don't do it often. You're making me do things to better myself, so I appreciate that. And I've derailed myself again. Yeah, so we're going to go through this list and we're going to make everything, and we're going to have chats. We're going to hang out. We're going to name stuff. And then we're going to talk about how nervous I am to run this session 0 for a live audience with at least one person who hasn't played D&D before, I hope. Berberis. My brother in Bannerlord, Mountain Blade 2 Bannerlord, my first playthrough, which I'm coming to a close with because I've brought the Western Empire to the forefront of Calradia. And it's getting to a point where like the large scale battles are getting a little bit boring, because like you're not as important in a big like 2000 versus 2000 battle as you are when it's 100 versus 100. I don't think anyone who's chatting right now actually has played this game, so sorry about that. But my brother in this game is called Bob Ross because he looks like Bob Ross. And it forces you to, like, you have a brother and sister, and then you get to name them. And I couldn't be bothered when they came up because I didn't think I'd ever see him again. And I called them Lado and Lasso. Coming to the end of, yeah, it's like I was telling you, Rob, that I want to do like a Sturgians are like the Viking, like the Norse themed like empire. And I want to do like a Stygia campaign where I'm just like a Viking. And I want like no cavalry and like barely any archers. Everyone's just going to have javelins. And I'm going to play with like the death enabled and stuff. And I'm going to play like a proper YOLO. campaign where if I die, I die. But I'm going to be like a pig-headed Viking. Like I can keep my saves and stuff so that I don't have to abandon the other save. But it's just getting to a point where like we're the strongest empire, and like you're just slowly going around the map taking all the territories, and then like while you're over here, these guys will declare war on you, and then you got to go back and go deal with them and take a couple of their territories, and then these guys start taking stuff back, so you go back, and it's just like it's not as fun as like the early game. It definitely like peters off. So there you go. That's my Bannerlord. That's my weekly Bannerlord update. Ciao. As always, the document for this stream and all of its fun contents are available with the doc command at this address. Make a copy of it, bookmark it, do whatever you got to do so you can look at it throughout the week. You know, when you sat there on Wednesday and you're thinking, God, can't wait till Sunday's stream. You know, I'm so excited. You can open the document, have a look, see if there's something you want to name, whatever. That's always there. If you're new, if you're watching this on YouTube, then you're already there. If you're not watching this on YouTube and you're watching this live, then our YouTube's where to go to get caught up with how we arrived here, which is totally optional. You can very well get caught up to where we are just by reading the document, I suppose. But all of that is there. I've been doing my homework this week and made sure it's all uploaded to YouTube, and I will make sure this episode goes up as well in a timely manner. And as always, we are here every Sunday, 6 PM GMT, to continue our world building experience, which is becoming a session planning experience. It's just becoming an overall D&D GM good stuff cooperative stream. And remember, I mean this, if there's anything you want to talk about that's RPG related, just drop it in chat. You see how easily we are derailed here, and same bat time, same bat channel, exactly. Point proven, right there. Yeah, we're easily derailed, and if you have a topic relating to D&D, maybe you're a first-time GM, maybe you've never DM'd before, maybe you've never played before and you want to play the game and you've got questions, right? Whatever they may be, just drop them in chat and we'll talk about them, because we love to get sidetracked here. And if we could get sidetracked by something that's actually relevant, that would be amazing, right? I'd appreciate that. That's not to say I don't appreciate getting sidetracked by stuff that's not relevant, as I'm sure you're well aware. But it'd be very cool to realise that we've been sidetracked for 20 minutes about something that's actually relevant to the channel, because we're all here to learn, right? We're here to hone our craft, to learn to be better players and GMs, and that's the tagline, right? So, as always, thank you very much to my guys in chat, my guys and gals in chat. Those of you who come every week to contribute. You are what makes this channel. You are more important than I am. So thank you for turning up. Thank you for watching. Those of you who lurk, you are equally well appreciated. Thank you for being here, and I look forward to seeing you all again next week. So stay safe, and I'll see you